It's great to see all of you here. Welcome to the Chief Judge Workshop. It's a role I have filled many, many, many times, as has Dennis. And what we want to share with you today is really what's involved in being a Chief Judge, how to do the role well, and how to make sure that everything flows smoothly. Because if the contest chair is the face or the organizer of the contest, the chief judge is really the bones, the foundation, the part that holds things together. Understanding what goes together, what's important, what's allowed, what's not, those rules matter. Dennis is going to glow because I said that. So we do have an order today of what we're going to look at. This is casual. Please feel free to interrupt, to put something in chat, whatever works for you with any questions. We'll stop and go over that because ultimately the workshop is about you learning how to be the best chief judge you can and not about listening to me talk yet again, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to get bored with that sometime, right? Our first category that we're going to look at is officials and recruitment and understanding selection criteria. So we went over a little bit of this in area director training, and I know some of you have been to that. What officials is the chief judge responsible for? Who can tell me?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say judges.
Yes, judges is one. That's right. What else?
Timers.
Timers, yes. What else?
Ballot counters.
Yes. What else?
Tiebreaker judge.
The tiebreaker judge. That's right, Layla. Thank you. Good one. So your chief judge is responsible for all of those officials and to make sure that they're in place, they're recruited properly, and that they are qualified. There's one more that matters because of our choice of contests. Can anybody tell me what that is?
The sergeant of arms.
That is right, Mary, sergeant at arms, because when we have evaluation contestants, we need to have people who are going with them, in the room with them, making sure all of that goes. Yes, Layla.
I'm just going to put on my headphones. Hang on, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, let me just put my headphones on. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, not a problem at all. All of those are important parts of the contest. Let's have a look at who those people need to be. We'll start with the judges. They're a really important part of the contest because they've got a ballot to fill out, and ultimately they are the people deciding the winners. What does a judge need to have? Can a judge just be anybody? You grab some people off the street? What are the criteria to be a judge?
A nice robe.
Besides that, he has to be in good standing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they need to be a member in good standing of a club in good standing. What else? For the international speech contest, what do judges need?
Need to complete at least 2 levels in pathways.
That's right. And this is the one area where the legacy program can come into play. Those who were members before Pathways was introduced can have completed at least 6 speeches in the Competent Communicator. But really, the legacy program's been here for 7 years. They should have completed at least 2 levels in Pathways by now. Otherwise, what are you doing?
And Kris, that's past the club level.
That is correct. That's past the club level. At the club level, everything we're talking about today is really past the club level, but a lot of this applies at the club level as well. So for those who are here representing their club or learning on behalf of your club, please feel free to ask any club-related questions, and we'd be happy to answer those as well. That is definitely not a problem and just as important. Timers. What do timers need to have?
A timing light.
Timing light or a timing device of some sort is important. What qualifications do they need to have? Do they need to be Toastmasters?
Yes. No, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to be members in good standing of a club in good standing. That's right. And realistically, this is a great place for your detail people. If you've got people in a club or who you've noticed in an area who are the nitpicky ones and really precise, and well, you missed an at there and you didn't dot that I quite right, and I couldn't see that the period was at the end of the sentence, those people are probably going to be really good timers. They're precise and they're accurate. One of the things that I've learned firsthand is that when you're timing at a level, especially the higher you get, it's really easy to lose track of time because the speeches are good and you're thinking, oh, wow, I got to push that light. Long time ago, when I was an area director, Mary and I were timing for a district conference, one of the last fall ones, I believe,
Yes.
and almost lost track of time and had to get our light on very quickly in order to show the speakers time. Because it's a contest, time is extra important. So choosing people who are really detailed for this matters. You don't want to just choose anybody, throw somebody in that don't know anything. It's okay if they don't have experience, but if they're a detailed person, they're going to pick up on that and show the kind of skills that will work well there. What about your ballot counters? Are there any special qualities your ballot counters need to have? And Dave, I noticed that you've joined us recently. Please feel free to just unmute and shout out an answer if you've got anything to share.
They should be able to add.
Yes, they should be able to add. That is such an obvious criteria, and yet a lot of people don't have it. Good
Or
one.
At
Yes.
least use Excel in a way as a secondary or their calculator, whatever.
Something like Excel works really well as a calculator, especially if you've got people who struggle with that. But making sure people can math is a really useful quality, not just in ballot counters, but in your judges. And we're going to get back to that. But in your ballot counters, this is a great role for newer people. Just make sure that they at least have a calculator app on their phone or that they can add up numbers between 1 and 3. Tie-breaking judge. What criteria should a tie-breaking judge have beyond that of the regular judges? Any ideas?
A better robe.
A better robe. Okay, well, I've got a really nice one. I'll just bring it to the next
A
contest.
better one. Yeah.
Got it. Other than a better robe, what else should a tie-breaking judge have? Should the tie-breaking judge be that new guy who just came in?
No, not.
Okay. Why not, Mary?
Well, if he's the new guy that just came in and doesn't have, the criteria of completing 2 levels, then he shouldn't be a judge. If he's a new member and he's from a previous Toastmasters club, then yes.
That's a factor. But what else do you want your tie-breaking judge to have? Should your tie-breaking judge be experienced? Suzanne, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. He has to be experienced. He has to be able to identify something that maybe the other judges didn't pick up on, which would make a big difference in the way he or she perceives the speech quality.
Yes. Now, Suzanne, do you want to tell us why the tie-breaking judge should be perhaps even more experienced than the regular judges? Why is that a benefit?
Well, like I said, they'll pick up on things that the other judges didn't notice or perceive as being important. If you're an experienced judge, you have a better idea of the nuances in the organization of your ideas, how you present yourself, and the subtle distinctions of how a speech can be improved.
Yes,
So
that's absolutely true. The other part of that is that the tie-breaking judge is responsible to rank all of the speakers. All the regular judges rank first, second, and third. The tie-breaking judge has to rank maybe 8 or 10 speakers. That can get to be a lot and can be really hard to separate out. So having someone who is comfortable doing that, who's going to remember to fill out all the bits on the form, makes a big difference. An experienced person is a great person to have as your tie-breaking judge. This is a good place to go for someone who's been around a long time, or someone who has district leadership experience, or is a past district director or governor. Any of those probably have a lot of experience and would be great choices for something like a tiebreaker judge. Sergeant at Arms. What qualities does the Sergeant at Arms need to have? Layla?
I believe a sergeant of arms should be able to monitor who's coming in and out, make sure nobody enters when somebody is speaking during the speech contest. I think that's a pretty critical role that the sergeant of arms has. And I also wanted to make a comment also about the tie-breaking judge. I've noticed that in contests last minute, if you don't have it, often the chief judge plays a double role. I don't know if that happens with anybody else, but
I've
yeah.
seen things like that happen. There are times where you're simply scrambling at the last minute, but the rule book does say that you should not hold more than one role at a contest, and that is absolutely something we are going to be looking at. Owen, what did you want to add?
Oh, for Sergeant at Arms, it's good if the person like works in the building that they're in.
Well, that helps too, yes. Remember, we're looking at Sergeant at Arms for the evaluation contest. So the Sergeant at Arms for evaluation is responsible to take those contestants out of the room after the test speaker has spoken, to then escort them to another place. And as Owen said, it's good if they know the facility, supervise them there, time them for 5 minutes, and then take away their notes and keep them away from them until it's their turn to go up and speak. It's important that the Sergeant at Arms does that so that all of the evaluation candidates have a level playing field. Imagine if one person got 15 minutes to review their notes and another got 5. That's not fair.
So in other words, the Sergeant of Arms should have good communication and people skills.
Yes, and not be afraid to put their foot down. Someone
Can I
says, I'm
add,
still writing, sorry about your luck. 5 minutes is done.
Can
On
I
the
add
book.
a couple things to that, Kris?
Go ahead, Dennis.
I think for Tall Tales International, Sergeant at Arms is making sure people aren't coming in the room is an important thing. So there's no interruptions during the speech. But can there be more than one Sergeant at Arms for the evaluation?
I think for evaluation, there probably should be more than one Sergeant at Arms, one to monitor the doors into the room and another to monitor the evaluation contestants in their room. Excellent point. Thank you, Dennis, for raising that. Before we move on to our next section, does anybody have any questions about officials, recruiting them, finding them, selecting them?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Scott.
So, although I'm trying to learn about the speech contest, right? And I'm going to be the contest chair for the area contest. But am I right in understanding that it's actually the chief judge who does the recruiting of those officials?
Yes, the chief judge should recruit the officials for all of the areas that we've talked about. Here's the challenge. If you get a chief judge from outside your area, maybe they don't know the people in the area. Something you can do as an area director and as a contest chair that's helpful is provide them with a list of people who would be willing to help out. Give them their contact information and let them deal with it. That way the judges are anonymous from you as well, because that's also a good thing and important. So thanks for raising that. One of the things we've also talked about is getting enough judges or getting the right judges. So let's just touch on that briefly. Let's just touch on that very briefly. For a club contest, you don't have to have a set number of judges, but I recommend that you have more judges than contestants. That's just a general rule of thumb that I have personally. That way you don't have 3 people trying to judge 8 contestants, and you've got a broader field. Bringing in judges from outside at the club level might be a great way to get to know other clubs, share help each other. All good things. At the area level, you need to have either 5 judges or equal representation from each area. Equal representation means the same number of judges from each club. That could be 1 judge from each club, and that's each club in good standing, not each club participating in the contest. You have a club that's in good standing but chooses not to compete. That's their choice. They're still part of clubs in good standing, and if you're going with the equal representation, they still need to send a judge. Your equal could be 2 judges from each club, or it could be 0. 0 is also equal, and that means you're getting all your judges from outside your area. If you know getting judges from some of your clubs is challenging, maybe that's a great idea to start with. If you can do both of those and have 5 judges, all from equal representation, whatever that looks like for you, that's great. If you can't, getting 5 judges from outside your area is a good way to minimize bias. If you really can't do that, and I know in some of our more outlying areas that's going to be challenging, getting 5 in whatever way you can is part of reality. I understand. That's okay. That's where reality happens. At the division level, you have the opposite problem. You need to get judges who don't belong to the same clubs as competitors. How many people know somebody who belongs to 4 or 5 clubs? Yeah. And when those people are competing, or you've got 3 or 4 of them, that makes finding judges at a division contest really hard. This is where a chief judge at a division contest would ideally be looking outside the division, hopefully finding some people who don't belong to one of the clubs that any of the competitors belong to. And that's a process that you simply work through. But the rule book is your friend in this. You really want to know that rule book inside out. And the rule book shows you clearly what judges are required for what. Dennis, can we maybe pop that part up and have a quick look at which judges are required in which area?
Okay, now I found how to unmute myself.
Awesome.
I can find how to share. And I am an only child, so for me, sharing is difficult.
All right, so we'll get that form up here and have a look at the rule book. The rule book is truly one of the key things that you want to be looking at and knowing well.
Where would you like to go, Kris? Sorry.
I wanted to have a look at the rule book section that talks about the different judges required for each contest.
You got it. We're coming. We're getting there.
I believe you.
I am. Yeah. Oh, where is that, Kris?
I think it's further up.
Oh, I know where it is. It's under here.
Yes. That's really hard to read. Maybe we could grow it. Yes, that's much, much better. So here we are, number 5, general procedure on page 10, shows you specifically what's required. Occasionally, there's some ambiguity in the rule book. If you're not sure, you can ask someone you respect about that to help clarify, or you can simply phone Toastmasters.org and they will be glad to talk to you and answer any questions you might have. But when you're not sure of something, checking in the rule book is a really good idea and a really good way to be certain. It's something I still do regularly, just to be sure. And sometimes I do it just to prove I'm right, because being right's always nice. Let's go on and have a look at some of the forms that are needed. And Dennis, maybe we could start with the judge's certification.
Ta-da-da!
Beautiful. When you're recruiting your judges, you want to send this form out to them as you recruit them. You do not want to wait until the last second. Send them this form. They need to fill it out. It's relatively straightforward. It clarifies their credentials. They sign it. They send it back to you. If you're sending it to someone who just can't come up with a digital signature and they type their name in the signature box, that is considered legally acceptable as a signature. If you're talking to someone who doesn't know their member number, that will show up when they log into toastmasters.org. It will say, hello, Kris, or your name if it's not Kris, and show your member number. So it's easy to see that. But please do be sure that they have all of that information entered. No, the member number is not hello, Kris.
Oh, okay.
But do be sure that they have all of their information entered so that you've got a clear picture that your judges are there, they're ready, they're certified, they're in order. This isn't something you want to run around doing 5 minutes before the contest. This also is your judge's commitment that what they're going to do is judge honestly and make sure that they're judging this speech by this speaker at this time and not applying a whole lot of other criteria they might know about the person. We're all human. Sometimes people need to be reminded of that. We're going to talk about what to say to your judges in the briefing section in a little bit. You also want to send your judges the ballot and judging form. Could we pull that one up, Dennis? Beautiful. Here is a ballot, and you'll want to also let the judges have a look at this, understand what the ballot looks like, what they're judging, and see how they're filling things in. As you'll see, the ballot is specifically labeled for each contest. Use the right ballot. That may sound simplistic. I've been at contests where I've been given a ballot for a different contest as a judge. Give them the ballot that relates to the contest you're doing. That way it's judging the right and appropriate things for that contest. Imagine using this for evaluation. Effective use of exaggeration. I'm not sure that's a good fit for evaluation, although it might make for a humorous one. Choose the right ballot and be sure that you get that to the judges. You also want to get the timer sheet to the timers when you recruit them. Dennis, can we have a quick look at that? Here we are. The timer sheet is pretty straightforward. Now, I'm a fan of giving both timers a sheet and having a good review of this, but the rule book only requires that one timer have a sheet and keep track of the timing, and the other timer is responsible for the signals. I usually do both just in case one is a little inattentive because life happens and I'd rather be safe than sorry. But this is the sheet you want. This sheet is picked up by the chief judge from the timer at the end of the contest. The timer doesn't have to make any decisions, mark anybody as over or under time. They just hand you the sheet of what they've recorded. You as the chief judge decide what is over and under time. Anybody remember what's over or under time for a contest?
Yes.
Go ahead, Lena.
By half a minute.
That's right. If you are more than 30 seconds under the minimum or more than 30 seconds over the maximum, you are disqualified. And it very conveniently tells you how long all of the contest speeches are right here. So if you're not sure how long Tall Tales is, hey, it's 3 to 5 minutes. All right, so someone would be disqualified under 2:30 or over 5:30. Is everybody pretty clear on that?
Kris,
Okay.
I think
Yep.
it's important, and I know this is a rule change. You would be disqualified at 5:31 or over.
Yes.
Just to clarify it, because
Yes, as opposed to 5:30:53 or something. That
Correct.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. So you've got that full second to finish. If someone is within the 5:30 point, they would still be okay. Excellent point to raise. You're also going to send out the ballot counters tally form. We'll have a very quick look at this, but we'll look at it a little bit more later. It's a pretty straightforward form. You write your contestants across the top, you write your judges down the side. You record how each judge scored each contestant, and we're going to break this down in detail later, so I'm not going to break it down right now. Those are all the things you want to send out. And make sure that you have them. Also make sure you've got the forms ready. When you're doing an in-person contest, Be sure you've got at least 2 timer sheets for each contest, at least 2 counter sheets for each contest. Have some extra judges' ballots handy just in case someone didn't print theirs, or have them printed if you know people aren't likely to do that. Have some extra certifications if there's some you haven't received. Being prepared makes a big difference. The last form that's handy to have is the certificates, and I find that the certificates are something I usually end up doing as chief judge because I'm the person who's finding the results. One of the lazy things that I like to do is to have the certificates pre-prepared. Get them there, fill them out, write in the name, the contest, the everything. You do that for your participation anyways. Just drop those names into first, second, and third. And if you've got an economical way of printing, have them all printed and ready to go. That way, all you've got to do is pull out the correct first place one, and nobody's trying to read difficult handwriting. We've all seen that person who you can't read the name, right? And sometimes you luck out and you've got someone with great writing. Other times, not so much. Minimize what's needed, and at the very least, have them printed out in blank with the name blank. So you've got International Speech Contest or Tall Tales Speech Contest, Area 57. You've got all that filled in. All the chief judge is doing is writing in the name. That way they're ready to go. That way you're minimizing that long time period where people are filling time going, is the chief judge back? Are they done counting the ballots yet? We've all been at that contest, haven't we? And it can feel really long. You want to do as much as you can to be prepared. Spend the time ahead so you don't have to spend the time in the moment. Is everybody pretty clear on forms so far? All right. Disqualifications and who can't compete. Who cannot compete in a contest?
Usually an area director, division director, any of the leadership, I think, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
right. Yep. Any deck member cannot compete in a contest. Who else can't compete?
I'll show the answers to make it easier.
Well, now
Those
you're like you cheat.
Not in good standing, not having
Yes.
required qualifications, especially for the international speech contest.
Mm-hmm. International director candidates, international directors, region advisor candidates, international executive officers, people who are presenting a workshop at a conference, people who are chair of a committee at a conference, people who are serving as a judge or a contest chair or something visible in one of those contests that's the same as theirs. So if I'm competing in Tall Tales, I can't go and be chief judge in another Tall Tales contest. I can once I've failed to proceed to the next level, but not until then. That's important to understand. Really important. What might disqualify a competitor?
Lack of originality.
That's going to go to protest. So we're going to touch on that a bit later. But
Yep.
there are 2 areas where someone could be disqualified. One is time, and we've touched on that briefly. But the other is eligibility. Right now, we're preparing for a fall contest season. We've got Tall Tales and evaluation coming up, and we're going to have the club level and the area level and the division level. And then we've got a great big long wait until May when we're going to have the district level. Competitors need to maintain their eligibility all the way through. So if you've got somebody in your club or your area who's competing, make sure they stay up to date on their dues. Make sure your club stays in good standing so that that person can continue to proceed as a competitor. You don't want to lose out on a small technicality because they lost eligibility over renewing a day late, or we thought this person in the club renewed, but they didn't. Be conscious of that. When you've got a big gap like this, it's a great tool to make sure people stay with the club because they want to keep competing. But it's also important to make sure that the member remains in good standing and that the club remains in good standing as a support to that member. Both sides of that are really important. Is everybody fairly clear on that? Okay. How would you know who can't compete? How would you know? Let's say I come to you and I want to compete in a contest. How do you know whether I'm eligible?
I believe there's a form they have to fill out and sign.
There absolutely is a form that indicates that they are eligible to speak and that their speech is original. Excellent point, Layla. This is an important form because A, it shows you who can't compete, but it also is that person's commitment to, yes, I am an eligible competitor. You find out later they didn't. The onus is clear. You did your due diligence in asking the question. If someone isn't truthful or chooses not to read the form, then you can only control so much. This is your way of confirming this. And if you're not sure, ask the question. Are you sure you're eligible? I know you were planning to run for Club Growth Director next year. Oh, I didn't realize that would affect things. Ask the questions. It never hurts to have too much information. Well, it does, but not in this context.
How about the eligibility checker, Kris?
The eligibility checker is a great way to make sure people have completed education awards. I am not certain that it checks for whether they are in a district leadership role or an international leadership role. And it would not have a way to know if someone was running for office because that's not something that's registered with TI. So checking or being careful with that is a smart idea anyways. When it comes to the international contest in the spring, the District Leadership Committee will be interviewing candidates for elected roles at that point. It's a great time to ask questions and say, are you running for an elected role? If you're planning to be an area director, that's great, not an issue. If you'd like to be the finance manager, wonderful, not an issue. This is for elected roles. So ask that question or even connect with the District Leadership Committee chair and say, hey, these people are all competing. Can you just confirm that none of them are running for an elected role? They'll be able to let you know that, yeah, this person is, or no, that none of them are. And that way you're covered. Double checking is a really good idea here. It would be terrible to let someone compete, have them do an amazing speech, look like they won, and then be ineligible. That would just be awful. Let's avoid that in the beginning by planning and preparation and being ready. What about people who are members of more than one club? Layla, go ahead.
Sorry, please do finish your conversation. I wanted to ask you about Console, CONSOLE. When I got a chief judge from another club outside our area, she introduced me to this. And the beauty of it is that, you set it all up, and then the judges get a particular way of entering their results, and then the ballot counters do, and so do the timers. And it automatically indicates who the winner is and even spews off the certificates for you.
That sounds very handy, Layla, but Toastmasters International, I believe, actually requires that we use the forms. We can use other tools to supplement them, but we do also need to use the forms.
But Toastmaster actually offers this on their website.
Console? Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of it, but we could check it out. That's a great thing, and definitely have a look at that as an option. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us, Layla.
My pleasure.
Although it might be difficult in in-person contests, considering from area on it's all in person, but let's look at it anyway.
Yes, that could be more challenging, but we'll check it out. Thank you for bringing that up. People who are members of more than two clubs and competing from more than two or more clubs. Anybody encounter that, Mary?
Yes, I did. I had a person who competed in the speech contest, and also in the evaluation contest.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was he was competing for one club in the speech contest, and then in the evaluation, another club. And that's allowed. But if he's coming in and he's doing the speech contest for one club and then go to another speech contest, he cannot compete in for two clubs. He has to compete for one.
That is correct. Now, what if he belongs in two clubs in different districts? Let's say I belong to a club here in District 123 and I win my club contest. I go on to the area level, but I also belong to a club in District 59 in Europe. And I want to go and compete there as well. And I don't even tell them I'm competing here because it doesn't matter, right? It's a different district. Can I do that? You are correct, Scott. I can't do that. You can only compete beyond the club level in one contest for each contest type. So I can compete once for Tall Tales, once for evaluation, and once for international speech contest beyond the club level. Doesn't matter where in the world I am. It's only once, not once per district, only once. And that applies, jumping back briefly to the disqualifications. All of those people who can't compete, club growth directors and area directors and all of those people, it doesn't matter what district they're in. If somebody's a member here in District 123 and they're a division director in Founders District in California, they still can't compete here. A division director is a division director is a division director. Doesn't matter where you are. It's not subject to just your district. It's anywhere. So understanding that really matters. We're going to go on to briefing the judges now. How many people here have ever been a judge, a voting judge? Okay. Have you ever heard a really bad judge's briefing where the chief judge didn't seem to know what they were talking about? I've been at those. Way too many. Briefing your judges is important. So what are some of the things you need to go over with your judges? Who can tell me?
Everything you said before this part about the judges.
Well, let's not keep them for half an hour. Can we abbreviate it just a bit?
Doesn't the district have a script for
There
the
are
chief
some scripts.
judges?
There are some scripts for these. I remember writing those. But it's important to know it offhand as well, because standing there reading a script only looks so authoritative, and you probably don't have a lectern in front of you to disguise that while you are briefing your judges. So knowing some of this offhand is really good.
Yeah.
Your judges need to remember that they are judging the speech that the speaker is doing at this time. If they've heard the speaker speak 100 times before, and this is the best they've ever done, that comparative does not matter. If they did it really well last week, or they really deserve to win, or you know they've had a really hard time, does not matter, not part of the judging criteria. They need to judge based on the judging criteria. They need to know to break their own ties. They can't submit a ballot that has Joe Smith and Susan Jones tied for first place. That ballot can't be used. They need to break that tie and decide whether Joe or Susan is in first place and which one of them will be bumped to second place. They need to sign their ballots. I usually tell the judges to sign their ballots right there in the briefing, and that way it's done. Make sure it's signed now. Don't forget. When I give them the ballot forms, I also try and pre-perforate them. I fold them back and forth a few times and make it so they're going to be easy to tear off. Have you ever tried to tear off a ballot? It's, it looks like waves on the ocean, but perhaps not for a ballot. Or they give you the entire form, only the ballot portion at the bottom. Dennis, maybe we could bring up that ballot again. Only the ballot portion at the bottom is what's handed in. It has to have that signature or it is not valid. The names have to be readable or it is not valid. I've had to invalidate ballots, and sometimes it actually affects the outcome of a contest. So you want to be sure that your judges know they need to have legible answers right here. They need to have signed the ballot, and they should print their name so we know whose ballot it is. We know that this one is Suzanne's, and this one is Mary's, and this one is Scott's.
I also tell the judges, Kris,
Yeah.
to the top portion of their ballots, to keep it and throw it away at home. I've seen contestants go through the garbage.
My goodness. I've never seen anyone go through the garbage, but I believe it could happen. And yes, take it home and shred it somewhere else. Do not dispose of it at the contest. Your judging and your opinion and your perception of those speakers is private and confidential. Keep it that way. Shred it at home. Burn it if that's your thing. Whatever you do, dispose of it discreetly in a way that's not going to be spread around. That's really important. And just hand in that last part of the ballot so that it can be done. While we're talking about this, when I choose judges, I also tend to try to make sure that, as we talked about earlier, they can math and that they can add up columns of single and double digit numbers in a passably timely manner. They've got a minute between speeches. There is only maybe 8 numbers to add up, even on the international form. It shouldn't take 5 minutes. Most people have a calendar app. Check that your judges have a calendar app. Tell them to bring a calculator. You want them to be able to proceed within a reasonable time. And remind your judges of that. If they can add up their individual tallies in that 1 minute, that's awesome. If they can't, take a bit of time at the end. You've got it. Go ahead, Mary.
Unmute. I also tell them, don't sit up front. Don't sit together in a bunch. I prefer to, like you said before, sit in the back and be discreet where you are.
Mm-hmm. Too far back could be challenging with a volume level for some speakers. Yeah. But one area that can be really helpful is to sit close to an edge. Sit near an aisle, an edge aisle, something like that. Discretion is challenging. And for those who've never seen an in-person contest, what happens is you've got a bunch of judges, they fold up their ballots and they hold them up like this. Well, this is really not obvious at all, is it? When people worry about keeping judges secret online. Judges are going to be doing that, but it's a lot less obvious if nobody's having to crawl over 6 people in an aisle to get that ballot.
Could I mention something, Kris? Sorry.
Hi, Layla.
In 2015, I was, collecting the judges' ballots, and I had read through the manual back then. I don't know how it's changed today, but it says the judges should put their ballot in an envelope and hand it to the ballot counter, so that there's total privacy. Yeah.
I don't believe it mentions an envelope anymore, but I'm not certain on that. Dennis, maybe you could check that for us. I have been a judge at contests where I've been provided with envelopes for each one. It's a bit of extra work, but it is a nice way to have some discretion with those ballots. I've typically just folded mine up into 2 or 4 pieces so that it's not easily read and handed it over. The ballot counters then bring them to the chief judge, and the chief judge collects the tie-breaking judge's ballot. Back to our briefing, though.
So here's the response to that question.
Yes.
Right here, when voting judges, blah, blah, date, blah, blah, provide voting judges with envelopes in which to secure their balance prior to collection.
There you go.
Right there.
Yeah.
Good job. Way to go, Layla.
Pleasure.
One of the other things that I make sure that judges know is what they can protest on. And we had a little bit of mention of protest earlier. What can judges protest on? On what criteria?
The timing, the originality,
Judges don't protest on timing. That's just a decision
Oh.
based on the timing by the chief judge, but that's okay. That could be a disqualification. Originality is another good one, Layla. That's great. Somebody else?
Naming somebody
Mhm.
else that was in the contest during the speech.
Yes, reference to another contestant or their speech at that contest. That's another great one. That is a possibility. And those are two areas where people are often tripped up. There's a third one. What else?
Could I just share an experience that happened during our contest? Is that the person who was speaking could not see the timer information. The timer did not make it clear. It was not visible. So it sort of made it unfair for the contestant. So they protested on that. So that was probably.
Okay. It's not an official ground for protest, but it is the responsibility to ensure that timing is visible to all contestants. And that's a fair issue to bring up. Make sure that your contestants can see the timing device, whatever it is. Or if you have a contestant who requests another kind of timing, ensure that you are aware of that. For example, for those who were at our conference earlier this year, you might have noticed that Marianne Gani, who has limited vision, asked for audible signals, and you could just faintly hear them when she was speaking to trigger her as to when her timing was. Sometimes a contestant who can't see the timing signals for whatever reason will request those, and those need to be honored.
So there was a secondary issue for online contests.
We're
Sometimes.
not, Layla, we're not
Oh.
doing online contests.
Oh, okay, sorry, because it would
We-
disconnect the timing, everything would get messed up.
These are all in person.
Okay.
So that's okay. Everything we're doing from area on is going to be fully in person. And so we need to keep that in mind. Owen, go ahead, and then Mary.
Yeah, I've been asked to be a chief judge for my club,
Mhm.
and it is a hybrid club that most of the people are online. So I could see some problems with forms and stuff. Any suggestions for that?
Send the forms out. People should be able to complete the forms easily online. When I've judged a hybrid contest as chief judge in the past, what I've done is had the digital forms sent to myself and the ballot counters' emails. And then we collect the physical ones. And if a ballot counter is online, I'll take a picture of it and share it on the screen or hold it up to the camera so that we can all work together. We've got enough technology now that showing someone something that's physical by taking a picture or holding it up shouldn't be a big deal. Screen sharing to show something online shouldn't be a big deal. Does that give you some tools there, Owen?
It gives us some ideas. Thank you.
Excellent. No worries. Mary, go ahead.
Okay, I had an incident where I was the chief judge, and one of the judges came in and did a protest on a contestant and refused to fill out the ballots for that
Okay.
contestant. And I said, you have to have, even if you protest against the contestant, you should pick who's first, second, and third other than the contestant, because we need a valid ballot from the judge. Is that true?
Yeah, the fact that the judge is protesting something doesn't mean that they don't need to provide a ballot. You still need to provide a ballot. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, because then you can do the protest why you don't think this person is qualified for the speech or the contest, other than that, but fill out the ballot.
Yep, and we're going to talk a little bit about handling protests shortly, so thank you for raising that. Announcing the rules at a contest is something that people sometimes dispense with. After all, rules don't seem that exciting, but they're important because if we don't know the rules, it's really hard to follow them. And for contests, this can really matter. There are a few rules that need to be announced at the contest publicly. Where the speaking area is, what the timing and disqualification points are, what order the contestants will compete in. That's usually done by your contest chair. Who can lodge a protest and to whom it is lodged? That's a really important one because you don't need audience members wandering up to a contestant telling them that they want to lodge a protest. That doesn't work. Who can lodge a protest? Mary, you're on mute.
A judge?
A voting judge. Who else? One other category of people.
Maybe another contestant? I don't
Yes.
know.
Voting judges and contestants are the only people who can lodge a protest. And so they can do that. If they have a protest, they need to go to either the chief judge, that's you, or the contest chair. Now, if you have a contest Toastmaster, someone who is just introducing people but hasn't been in charge of organizing the contest, that's not who they go to. They go to the chief judge or the contest chair, which is the contest organizer. So if you don't want to stand up and introduce the people at your contest, but you're still organizing it, awesome. People would go to you. If you're giving this as an HPL to someone else to organize, great. But if they're organizing it, they're the contest chair, protests would go to them or to the chief judge. Announcing that and making it clear is really important. It helps to eliminate protests to and by people who do not need to be a part of that. But what happens when we have a protest? Has anybody ever been part of a protest situation? Mary, what happened at yours?
Okay, what happened was the judge came and did a protest on the contestant who presented the speech.
Mm-hmm.
And then another contestant came in and lodged a protest on another person because they claimed that it was plagiarism that he had. So
Okay.
what I did, my luck was I had the division director there, so I called in called in my division director to assist and told him what the protest was and everything. And that's how we handle it, but in a private area where other judges were. Not the judges, but where we were, and we had to deal with it. And we decided that the person was disqualified. And when we announced we had 8 contestants, we announced that there were 2 disqualifications, and that's all we said.
That's absolutely
why they were
great.
Disqualified. It was
That's
just
a great way to announce it. How you handle a protest sometimes depends on what the protest is.
Yeah.
If the protest is to originality, there's usually some clear proof. This was already here out there on the internet by somebody else. That's something that can be concretely proven. If someone failed to cite something, you might bring in your judges and say, how many judges, did anyone notice that they failed to cite something? Maybe only one judge noticed and another says, no, I remember hearing them reference this. And at that point, if you're being recorded, you might have to go to a recording if it's available. But you want to be sure that you're getting to the root of the protest and that you're treating everybody fairly. I've been part of several protests. One was to originality, and that one was set aside and not disqualified. Another was to reference to another contestant's speech. It was actually someone I know personally. And the contestant said, well, I didn't know about that. Well, that's great. The rules aren't subject to what you know, I'm sorry. And the contestant was quite upset, but all the judges were brought into a room. All the judges agreed that the contestant had referenced another contestant's speech, and the contestant had to be disqualified, unfortunately. It's never a pleasant process, but where there's anything that could be subjective, it's always best to bring in all the judges and ensure that you have, if not consensus, at least a majority that are clear on what happened.
Kris, just so there's understanding, I just highlighted it, that
Yes.
you need a majority of voting judges for
Yes.
the disqualification, so it's just highlighted. So people can see.
Absolutely. And when we had the disqualification issue, this was a few years ago, we did bring in all the judges, and the judges listened to the contestant and confronted him with this. The contestant responded and provided a response that satisfied the judges and as to where that came from and where that was. So thank you for showing that. And Mary, thank you for your story on that as well. Does anyone have any questions about handling protests?
Yes, may I say something, Kris?
Of course, go ahead, Layla.
So my question is that and this is what I encountered, is that you have to protest during the contest. You cannot protest after the contest has ended.
That's right.
And then my question is, if it's something that requires more research, do you have to decide right then and there while everybody's waiting for the results?
Yes.
Or so that's kind of difficult. Like if you're contesting something and you say it's on the internet, somebody's going to have to find that information and prove it.
In fact, this year at the World Championship of Public Speaking, there was a protest made, and there was a fairly lengthy delay while the matter was considered. The judges were called out, and this was looked at. So it does have to be looked at right away because the decisions are final once the contest is closed. That's just a hard line. If that means a wait, well, hopefully your chair can pull up some people for table topics or tell good jokes or something like that, because you're going to be filling some time. Do like they do at the International Convention. Have a conga line.
It just goes to show the importance of having your rule book and everything there so you know where to go to.
Absolutely. And most things are relatively easily searched online. Often, too, when a person brings a protest, especially about something like originality, they have some proof at hand and can hopefully provide that in a timely manner so that that can be done. We're going to have a look next at completing the counters tally. This form should look pretty easy to complete, but I have worked with some ballot counters who didn't find it quite as easy. So let's have a quick look at it. When I do this, I find the easiest things to do first are to list the names of the contestants in any order and to list the names of the judges in any order. Sometimes people just list the judges as they open ballots and the contestants as they come up. That's okay too. Whatever works. What's important is how we count the numbers. Let's say we have a contest with more than 3 competitors. That means that we're going to be placing first, second, and third. So with that in mind, it's important we look at all of these. Let's say we have our contestant Joe, and Joe gets a first place from Judge Susan, a second place from Judge Joyce, and a third place from Judge Bill. And as you can see, Dennis is marking down that we have 3 points from Susan, 2 points from Joyce, and 1 point from Bill. That's because at the bottom of the sheet, it shows us really clearly that we give 3 points for first place, 2 points for second place, and 1 point for third. And as a ballot counter, they're essentially going and opening each ballot, or you're opening each ballot and sharing it with them, and they're marking that down. A 3, a 2, and a 1. So a 3 from one person, a 2 from another person, all of those get marked down. At the end, once this is all marked, all you need to do is total up your 8 contestants and numbers of 3 or less. There's no chance you're going to have more than 21. And a handy way to look at this is that your totals across the totals line should equal your number of contestants times 6. So if you have 8 contestants, each contestant gets a total of 6 points, a 3 somewhere, or each judge gives a total of 6 points. Your numbers at the bottom should add up to 48. That's a great way to check that you haven't missed something. Once you've got this, check across. Make sure that your chief judge ballot matches that of your ballot counters. If there's one that doesn't match or a couple that don't match, pull all the ballots out again. Look at each one, make sure everybody has the same results. Okay, this is Susan's ballot. She gave first to Joe, second to Thomas, and third to Nicole. And so we would check that. We'd check it again. This is Joyce's ballot, and we're going to check what Joyce gave. At the end of it, all of your numbers should match, and you should have a clear answer as to who is first, who is second, and who is third. If a tie happens, this is where the tiebreaker's ballot comes out. Dennis, could we have a look at the tiebreaker's ballot?
Yeah, I was too focused on the check marks. There we go.
I'm glad you had fun with the check marks.
I did have fun with the check marks, yeah.
Very good. Okay, so the tiebreaking judge's ballot at the top looks pretty much the same as the regular one. It's the bottom where it changes. Let's have a look at that bottom part, Dennis. Here we go. The tiebreaking judge is marking all of the contestants on here. If there are 8 contestants, they are ranking them all 1 through 8. Let's say we have a tie between Joe and Thomas. Let's say our tie is for first place. We open the tie-breaking judge's ballot that only you as the chief judge has. You open it and you see that the judge has placed Joe in first place and Thomas in 5th place. What happens here is that we've broken the tie because Joe is ahead of Thomas. It doesn't matter that Joe is first and Thomas is 5th. It matters that Joe is ahead of Thomas. It wouldn't matter if they were 7th and 8th. What matters is that Joe is ahead of Thomas. So Joe becomes first place. What place does Thomas get? What place does Thomas get? Remember, Joe and Thomas were tied for first place. We broke the tie. Joe gets first. What does Thomas get?
Dennis said second.
Second. Yes, Dennis said second. He's giving waiting answers on me.
Oh,
That's right. Second place. It doesn't matter that the tie-breaking judge marked him as 5th. What matters is that there was a tie for first. The tie was broken, and the person who the tie-breaking judge ranked higher gets first. The person they ranked lower, who was also tied for first place, gets second. The next highest person will get third, and so on. Is that clear to everybody? Okay. I find there's often a lot of confusion about how to deal with tie-breaking ballots and how to work with that. And that's something I think is really important to deal with and to understand. When we go to announce these things, so you've gotten your certificates, you've filled them out, you've marked out your 3rd place winner, you've marked out the 2nd place winner, you've marked out the 1st place winner, and you go and hand your certificates to the contest chair. What should the contest chair, we're going to get to that one. What should the contest chair announce? Which results should they announce? Let's say we've got 8 contestants and we have some winners. Who are we announcing, Mary?
Oh, we should announce, first of all, let them know there was no disqualifications, or if there was a disqualification. That's the first thing you announce. You go on and you announce the 3rd place, 2nd place, and 1st place.
That is correct. What if we've only got 4 contestants?
Then you only announce 1st place. No, you go back and you announce.
We still announce 3rd, 2nd, and then 1st.
Oh, okay.
The rule book is pretty clear on this. And even if you only have 3 contestants, you announce 3rd and 2nd and 1st.
And if you have 1 contestant, you just announce like I did.
That's absolutely correct. Now, what happens if you're having a contest, you're an area director, and you only have 1 contestant for a contest? You still have to hold a contest. You do. The only time a contestant can be moved forward without a contest is at club level. Anything beyond that, if your district only had one contestant, you'd still have to have a contest. They'd probably only get disqualified by way of time, but you'd still have to have that contest. Everybody pretty clear on that?
Mhm.
All right, let's look at reporting the results. So we have a couple of forms for this. Yes, we've got the notification. Yes. This form is important. This is what you send to the next level. And it's what provides details for your division director, your district director, or at the district level, what provides information for international to go to the quarterfinals. And there's a lot of detail that gets sent out with that at the district level. So you fill out your notification of contest winner. You mark where it happened, the date, mark off your choice. You have to list all the contestants here. So just like on your tie-breaking judges list, you have to list all of them. So remember, we had Joe and Thomas. Joe gets listed first, Thomas is second. We list the person who was third, and then we look at all of those numbers we've added up. We list the person who was fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh and eighth. We list them all. Because if Joe can't go, then it goes to Thomas. And if Thomas can't go, it goes to the third person. And if we get all the way down to number 8, well, I guess that really is lousy for the first 7 people, but it could happen. And so we need to be prepared and provide all of those things. Apparently, Dennis is really rocking this contest. Either that or it's just a really popular name and there's a whole bunch of Dennises.
Yeah, there's five people with the same name competing to make it interesting.
That would definitely make it confusing. So it's important that you fill out these forms in a timely manner. Same day is a great time to do this. That way it's still fresh in your mind. You haven't lost the paper and it's right there. Send it off and get it to the person who it needs to go to at the next level. Be sure you include all the information. All of this should be on the forms that you've gotten from the level below. So as an area director, this should be on the forms you got from your club. As a division director, it should be on the forms you got from your area. You shouldn't have to go looking up club numbers. It should be on a form. Email addresses should be on a form. Telephone numbers should be on a form. And then mark down your information and make sure you're reachable, just in case there's any questions. Questions do come up after once in a while, and it's good to be able to answer them and provide clarification if it's needed. Any questions on announcements or finalizing the ballot counting? Go ahead, Layla.
Sorry, Kris. I was curious because, when a ballot counter, you notice it says judges, right, down the left side. So you're supposed to have the names of the judges. Am I correct?
That is right.
Must share the names of judges that you can put in there. What if they decide they would just like to give you J1, J2, J3, J4, and they don't want to tell you the names of the judges? Or sometimes I've been to contests where, the judges have to rename themselves when they're in the main room. Mm-hmm. So if they don't specify which number, we just get judge. We don't know who we're getting it from. It's very confusing. And
so here's the challenge. If the judge is renaming themselves in an online forum, that's great. Or if they're submitting something, that's fine. But when I sign my name, I sign my name. And that's why it says at the bottom of the ballot, signature. Your signature is a writing of your name and judge's name. Doesn't say judge's identifier. It says judge's name. So the judge's name should be on there so you can clearly discern. And that way, if there's a question, you know who to go and ask, just in case. Imagine the chief judge had a heart attack. They were the only person who knew who Judge 4 was. And somebody standing up the front going, hey, could Judge 4 go out to the back? That would look pretty silly, wouldn't it? Mary's laughing. She wants this to happen. Does that make sense, Layla?
Yeah, actually, I was reflecting on when we did online contest last year.
But we're doing them in person this year.
Right now. But I'm just saying that in the online, you don't know who's the person unless they put their name on it. And the chief judge should really indicate the names of the judges, preferably in advance of the contest, to the ballot counters, so they know exactly who's
Well, they
going.
don't have to let the ballot counters know the judges' names in advance. I usually let them know how many ballots to expect. And what I typically do is ask the judges to send by email their ballot to the chief judge and to the ballot counters. That way, in an online forum, we're all able to tabulate that information. In an in-person forum where we're going to be, we're going to have a physical form. And I sure hope when it says signature, people know to write their own name and people know to print their own name where it says judge's name. But that could be a good thing to clarify in a briefing if necessary, because if you've had issues with that before, maybe bringing it up is a good idea.
To Layla's point, Kris, with the envelopes, you can write on the, because I've done this as chief judge. You give the envelope and you write on judge 1, judge 2, judge, just an easier way to check as well. And you give them their envelope that corresponds to their number.
Yep, you can absolutely do that and just pencil their initials at the bottom or something like that if you want to know who that judge is. Very good. Last but not least, and certainly a relevant topic for this fall, we're going to look at having multiple contests at an event. This is always an issue of great consternation. We're done the first contest. What happens? First of all, we finished our first contest. The ballots have been completed and collected, and the chief judge and the ballot counters have left the room. Can we interview the contestants? I mean, we've got time.
After the winners are announced.
Sorry, Dave, I didn't catch you clearly. Could you say that again?
Sorry, you can interview the contestants after the winners are announced.
After the winners are announced. That's a new one on me. No, we don't have to wait for the winner's announcement. The ballots have been collected. The chief judge and the ballot counters are out there counting ballots. Mary, what's up next?
If you have multiple contests, like say Tall Tales and Evaluation, and some of the contestants in the Tall Tales are part of the evaluation contest, what you do, and I've seen it happen in some areas, they interview the people who are not in the second contest while the judges are counting, or they interview everyone after the two contests are finished and they're doing the ballot counting at the contest. So some areas do it differently. If you have multiple contests, they interview the contestants who are not in the second contest.
I'm going to cut you off there, Mary. That is an option. You don't have to interview the contestants. You don't have to interview all the contestants. But there is no reason you can't interview all the contestants. You could, if you chose, interview all the contestants of the first contest while the ballots are being counted. There is no rule that says you can't interview them if they're in the next contest. That is your choice.
Oh, okay, because
you can make that choice, but that is your choice. You don't have to wait to interview them.
Okay, because every time I went to the contest, they did it this way, and I found it very confusing.
Yes, there are a lot of people who do things that aren't necessarily in the rules, and because we've done it a lot, we assume it's a rule, but that doesn't always mean it's so. So it's good to understand that. If somebody feels strongly about that, or maybe there's a real fan favorite and you don't want to create favoritism, maybe you plan something totally different and do all the interviews after, but that's a matter of choice, not rule.
Okay, that's good to know.
Just showing the rule that might apply to that is that you'll conduct a brief informal interview with each contestant after ballots are collected per contest. So just to say that there is no rule that if you're in two contests, you can't treat each contest as their own, would be my Interview
right.
all the contestants. That's the number one thing.
Yep. The next thing we do is once our chief judge and our ballot counters come back, we have this next contest to do. What we want to do first is adjourn the first contest unless we're going to announce the winners right away, but that means people might leave. So usually we wait till the end. Adjourn the first contest, put it on hold, set it on that back burner, open the next contest, conduct your next contest, go through your ballot counting, go through your interviews, get your results back, and at the end of that, your chief judge comes back and gives you the results for contest number 2. Now, unless you're going to announce the results in backwards order, chances are good you're going to adjourn contest number 2, jump back to contest number 1, pull it back up to the front. We're going to announce the results for number 1. You announce your results. This is great. Everybody claps and cheers, and then you declare the contest closed. That means, like Layla mentioned earlier, that protests can no longer be lodged and the winners are final. It's important to know and understand that. You have to close that contest because you do not want someone calling you up a week later and saying, hey, this contest is still open and I have a protest. That would not be fun in anybody's book. You don't want to do that. So adjourn the previous contest, conduct the next contest, adjourn it, open the first one, announce your winners, close the first one, reopen the second, announce your winners, close the second. Does that make sense to everybody? If you've ever tried to read 2 books at the same time, you kind of have a handle on how this goes, or even have 2 conversations at the same time. Stop one or pause it, go to the next one, come back to the first one, but don't try and juggle both at once. It doesn't work well. This applies whether you're doing 2 different contest types for one area, or if, say, 3 or 4 areas are sharing a space and they're going to do their contests sequentially, you would set it up so that you do, say, area 27, and then area 28, and then area 29, but you would close each one of those contests before the other goes on. Or if you're doing all the awards at the end, you would just adjourn them all and you'd have a big stack of adjourned contests. Does that make sense? No one's looking too blank, so this is good. All right. Go ahead.
Sorry, my question is about who announces the winners. This is also an area of controversy. Chief Judge thinks they are to announce the winners, but they do not do so. They're supposed to communicate information to the chair of the contest, who would then announces the winners and gives out the participation certificates and ultimately the winning certificates. Is that correct, Kris?
Typically, the results have been announced by the contest chair, and I expect that's probably in the rule book as well, Dennis, if you want to have a quick look for that.
I have the results form up that shows the procedure. So this is the thing.
Excellent. There we go. Review the time record sheet, complete time disqualifications, verify counters results, and add the names in the announcement form. Contest chair, announce whether there are disqualifications, review the rules, announce the appropriate people, and then announce the results. And that seems pretty clear. I have actually never seen a chief judge try to announce the results, although sometimes as chief judge, I have been part of presenting the certificate in conjunction with the contest chair. But as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty clear the contest chair should announce the results, or the contest Toastmaster if there is one.
The first contest I ever organized, I asked an area director to be my chief judge, and he did not give me the information and announced everything himself.
Well, I'm sorry that happened, but that was incorrect.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So
That unfortunately incorrect things do happen, but thank you for letting us know that kind of thing occurs. That's the conclusion of the information I have for you. Do you have any questions that you'd like to bring up that we haven't touched on yet?
I don't know if I missed the beginning, but how do we find the people for all these various roles? And how do we know that they are qualified? You know, how do we, is there a WhatsApp group that somebody has set up for people who are interested in playing a role in a contest like judge, ballot?
Not that I'm aware of, but often it's helpful to go to other district leaders, area directors can ask other area directors, that sort of thing, for resources. Ask the people around you is usually a good starting point, but we did cover who to recruit and what qualifications they should have at the beginning. So you'll be able to see that on the recording later on, Layla.
Thank you.
One of the big things, though, fighting humans can be tough. One of the big things really is everybody needs to run contests. Everybody needs volunteers. Everybody struggles finding them. Help each other. Go and reach out to someone and say, hey, I can help you with this. Could you help me with that? That reciprocity is good. And maybe they're already helping someone else, and you can have a group of 4 or 5 people who are all offering support to each other. That way, it's a lot less difficult for everybody to find the required candidates in order to run their contest efficiently and effectively. As mentioned, the rulebook is your friend. There are all kinds of really valuable insights there. Everything that is new this year is marked with a diamond, so it's easy to see. Do make sure that you have the current version of the rulebook. That is 2024-25. There is not an excuse to get out of making an error or being disqualified by simply not knowing a rule. So make sure that you have the latest version, make sure you're enforcing the latest version, and please feel free to reach out to me anytime with questions. I would be happy to help.
Would you be able to share your email address in the chat?
Absolutely. I feel like the entire universe has it at this point, but I'll put it there just in case there's a couple people in the world who don't.
I don't. I also want
think you do, Layla.
Oh, I do? Anyway,
I'm pretty sure you do.
Okay, I posted console. Remember I mentioned you the cloud contest console? It helps put everybody together, all the role players of a speech contest. It's under Toastmasters tools. I've also put the link there in case you want to check it out or anybody else wants to check it out. And actually, it's tremendously efficient. I was kind of resistant to it because the ballot counters really don't play much of a role when you use the console. But all the others, the judges definitely have a very significant role.
We can definitely check that out. Thank you. I wasn't aware of that. I'm glad you brought it up.
2 things I'm looking at with that. One, it's for online, and 2, I don't know if it's TI affiliated because it's not the Toastmaster.org. So just to be careful.
Yeah, it's not at Toastmasters.org. You're right.
It was done in District 96. So it's not a Toastmaster tool. It's something somebody brought up. So just need to be careful with that to ensure that everything is current and accurate.
And it may be slightly less helpful in an in-person contest, but definitely something that could be checked out, and I'll have more of a look at it. I'm glad you raised it. Owen, I see your hand.
For area contests, I know you have to have a minimum of 5 judges. For club contests, is it the same, or do you really need 5 for a club contest?
It depends, is that famous answer.
Okay.
And what it depends on is how many contestants you have. If you have 2 contestants and you have 3 judges, I think that's fine. If you have 5 or 6 contestants, I would encourage you to have at least 5 judges.
Okay, thanks.
My rule of thumb personally is that the number of judges should exceed the number of contestants. Scott, I see your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is I found this very helpful. Thank you. But also, I would be interested in knowing if there's a possibility of a contest chair workshop.
It's not something we've talked about, but that could be an option to consider. I would suggest that you reach out to Program Quality Director Cynthia on that, and that's something she can talk about with the speech contest chair.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? Hearing none, it looks like we're going to wrap up on time. My email is in the chat. It's pretty simple, chrisnelson.tm@gmail.com. And you are welcome to reach out to me anytime. I like to think I'm fairly reachable, and I'm happy to answer questions or provide help if I can, or point you in the right direction if I can't. Thank you all for being here and for committing to having excellence as a chief judge and in organizing your contests this year.